Your fish is watching you right now. And I don't mean that in a vague, passive way. I mean your fish has already clocked your outline through the glass, processed whether you're moving fast or slow, and made a decision about whether you're a threat or a meal ticket. Most people assume their fish just drift around in a kind of mindless fog, completely unaware of the world outside the tank. But what if that's completely wrong? What if your fish not only knows you're there, but actually knows it's you, specifically, and not your neighbor? By the end of this video, you're going to see your aquarium in a way you never have before. Because the science is genuinely surprising. Here's what most aquarium owners never stop to think about. When you walk up to that tank, your fish doesn't just see human. It runs a rapid threat assessment. How fast are you moving? Are you staring directly at it? What's your silhouette look like today? And depending on those answers, your fish either swims towards you or bolts for the nearest hiding spot. This isn't random behavior. It's a finely tuned psychological system, one that researchers have only recently started to fully understand. Studies have shown that fish can recognize individual human faces, track your daily routines, catch emotions from other fish like a kind of contagion, and even remodel their own brains based on how you've decorated their tank. The gap between what we think fish experience and what they actually experience is enormous. So let's close that gap, one fascinating discovery at a time. The first thing that will genuinely surprise you is this: your fish might actually know your face, not just person standing there, your face. In a landmark study, Archerfish, those remarkable fish that shoot jets of water at insects, were trained to spit at images on a screen. Researchers showed them dozens of different human faces and found that the Archerfish could pick out one specific face from the crowd with 81 to 86% accuracy. And here's the part that makes this really impressive. The researchers equalized the brightness and colors in the images, removing the easy shortcuts. The fish still got it right. They were reading actual facial structure, pattern and shape, not just contrast or light. Now, Archerfish are specialists, but the principle likely applies more broadly. Fish don't read your eyebrows or your smile the way a dog might. Instead, they appear to be specialists in pattern recognition, which means your silhouette, your movement style, the contrast of your clothing against the background. These are probably your face to your fish. Your fish knows your outline, and you can see this play out in living rooms every day. Many fish owners report that their fish rush to the front of the tank, wiggle, and do what can only be described as begging, but only when that specific person approaches. Strangers get a much quieter, more cautious response. Lab zebrafish showed the same thing. When their regular caretakers entered the room, the fish shifted toward the front of the tank in anticipation. Not when a stranger walked in. When their person walked in. Think about what that means. Your fish has built a model of you. You are a known, categorized entity in its world. But knowing you exist and knowing you're safe are two very different things. And this is where fish psychology gets really interesting. Here's something that might change how you walk up to your tank forever. When you approach quickly and stare directly at your fish's brain processes that exactly the same way it would process an approaching predator in the wild. There are specialized neurons in fish retinas that detect what scientists call a looming image, an object that's rapidly expanding in the visual field. That's the classic signature of something coming to eat you. And when those neurons fire, they trigger escape circuitry almost instantly. This isn't a choice your fish makes, it's hardwired. A fast approach plus a direct stare equals run. Researchers studying nest-guarding cichlids found something even more specific. When a diver stared directly at the cichlid parents or their offspring, the fish attacked far more aggressively than when the diver simply looked away. These fish weren't just reacting to a large shape nearby. They were tracking where the diver's eyes were pointed. Direct gaze read as a direct threat. So what does this mean for you practically? It means that slow, sideways approaches to your tank aren't just polite. They're genuinely less frightening for your fish. You're not triggering the predator detection system. You're arriving as a predictable, non-threatening presence. And over time, that predictability is one of the most powerful things you can offer your fish psychologically. Because your fish is not just reacting to you in the moment. It's building a schedule around you. This next part sounds almost unbelievable, but the research is solid. Fish have something called time-place learning. In experiments, angelfish and golden shiners learned that food appeared in one half of the tank in the morning and the other half later in the day. They kept to that schedule even when the food was withheld, showing up in the right spot at the right time, waiting. Your fixed morning feeding time doesn't just trigger hunger. It literally gets encoded into your fish's internal clock. Zebrafish have also demonstrated what researchers call episodic-like memory, the ability to remember what they saw, where in the tank it appeared, and what the surrounding context looked like. All three pieces together. That's not just simple conditioning. That's a layered memory of an event. What this means for your fish is that you are not just a stimulus. You are a recurring character in a structured narrative that your fish is actively tracking. The routine you keep, or break, shapes how secure or anxious your fish feels about its world. And speaking of anxiety, what's happening inside your fish's tank matters far more than most owners realize. Here's a finding that genuinely changes how you should think about tank decoration. Wild fish placed into bare, empty captivity develop smaller brains than their wild counterparts. Smaller. The brain literally shrinks in the absence of complexity. But when researchers added rocks, plants, and structures to tanks, they saw brain growth and increased neural complexity over weeks to months. Your decorating choices are remodeling your fish's nervous system. Zebrafish in preference tests consistently chose zones with plants, shelters, or even just a printed gravel image on the floor over empty glass. They spent dramatically more time in enriched areas. Studies on Siamese fighting fish, bettas, showed that tiny bare tanks led to hovering, wall pecking, and repetitive pacing, while larger furnished tanks produced normal swimming, foraging, and exploration. That pacing in a bare tank isn't boredom in a casual sense. Behaviorally, it looks a lot like genuine psychological distress. But here's the twist that surprises most people. It's not just about adding enrichment. It's about keeping it stable. When researchers suddenly added lots of new enrichment and then altered it unpredictably, zebrafish became more anxious and more pessimistic in what are called judgment bias tests. An unpredictable environment, even a richly decorated one, pushed fish toward a more negative interpretation of ambiguous signals. So a human who constantly rearranges the tank decor, moving plants around, shifting rocks every week, may actually be turning their fish's world into a mental minefield rather than a playground. Stability is the gift. Predictable richness is better than exciting chaos. And your fish isn't experiencing all of this alone, because something remarkable happens between fish in the same tank. This might be the most emotionally striking finding in all of fish psychology. Zebrafish watching a stressed fish, or even a video of a stressed fish, begin showing the same anxious behaviors themselves. Their cortisol levels rise, their behavior shifts, and researchers trace this to the oxytocin system, the same hormone family that underlies basic forms of empathy in mammals, including humans. Your fish can catch fear from other fish just by watching. This emotional contagion gets stronger the longer fish live together. After just 1 week of co-housing, groups of zebrafish caught each other's fear more readily than fish that were strangers. A long-kept community tank doesn't just share space, it shares an emotional climate. If you net one fish roughly, chase it around during cleaning, or create a panicked scramble, the other fish experience something of that fear too. What this means practically is that gentle, unhurried handling isn't just kinder to the individual fish you're moving. It keeps the whole group's emotional temperature lower. The way you interact with one fish ripples through the entire tank. And there's one more layer to this that brings everything together in a way that feels almost philosophical. Researchers studying cleaner Wrasse, a small reef fish, found something that genuinely shook the scientific community's assumptions about fish cognition. When these fish were placed in front of a mirror with a colored mark on their body that they could only see in the reflection, they inspected the mark and tried to remove it. They passed a version of the mirror self-recognition test, the same test used to assess self-awareness in great apes and elephants. Now, what exactly that means about fish consciousness is still debated. But here's what we do know. The same cleaner Wrasse species can recognize over 100 individual client fish in the wild and adjust its behavior based on recent interactions with each one. The memory, the social tracking, the behavioral flexibility, it's operating at a level most people never imagine when they look at a fish tank. So, does your fish know it's living in a tank? Probably not in the way you'd frame that question. It's unlikely to be pondering walls and glass and the concept of captivity. But it absolutely knows its environment. It knows the layout. It knows the schedule. It knows your silhouette. It knows whether you're the safe giant or the scary one. And it's making constant, sophisticated assessments about all of it. The world inside your aquarium isn't a simple loop of swimming and eating. It's a rich psychological landscape shaped by memory, routine, social emotion, and yes, by you. So here's what you can do right now, today, with everything you've just learned. Slow down when you approach your tank. Come from the side rather than straight on, and avoid staring directly at your fish, especially if you have more anxious species. Keep your feeding schedule consistent, because your fish is literally timing its day around you. Add some plants or shelters if your tank is bare. Even lightweight plastic plants or a simple gravel image on the floor makes a measurable difference to how safe your fish feels. And once you've set up that enriched environment, try to leave it alone. Stability is more valuable than novelty. And if you have a community tank, remember that the emotional climate is shared. Calm handling, predictable routines, and a thoughtful setup don't just benefit one fish, they benefit everyone in there. If this video changed how you see your fish, I'd love to know. Drop a comment below. Do you think your fish recognizes you? Have you noticed it behaving differently when you approach versus when a stranger does? I read every single comment, and those conversations genuinely shape what we explore next on this channel. If you want to keep going deeper into the hidden psychology of the animals we share our lives with, make sure you're subscribed. There's a lot more coming that I think will surprise you just as much as this did.